Today's reading is from Psalm 120, a song of ascents. In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, ye deceitful tongue? A warrior's sharp arrows, with glowing coals of the broom tree. Woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war.
Thanks for reading, Joe. In my distress, I called on the Lord. This picture coming up is Russell Brand. You may know of him. He's a comedian, used to be married to the singer Katy Perry. He's flamboyant. He's been a wild character at times, but on something of a spiritual journey. He's explored various faiths. And just last week, he posted a video about the rise in prayer during this time. He noted the increase in Google searches for prayer. He offered some advice on how to call out to what he calls the limitless, the oneness. And the video ends with him leading a little prayer time. There have been scientific studies in the newspapers about the health benefits of being a praying person during this crisis. Psalm 120, verse 1, in my distress, I called to the Lord. I wonder if you're someone who's found yourself doing that more often recently. One of the things the Psalms is they're the prayer book of the Bible. They've been precious and familiar to ordinary Christians right through the history of the church, in part because they're so varied and so relatable in the emotions and the responses that they verbalize. Some are outbursts of praise, other psalms outbursts of complaint to God. Some are sung joyfully to trumpets or tambourines, others are cried with tears from the pit. Thank you, sorry, help us. It's all in here. In the Psalms, God himself has given us the language for all the highs and lows and responses of our journey of faith. Psalm 120 is the first of a discrete collection near the end of the book. This collection in particular are journey psalms. You can see that because if you've got your Bible open, you'll notice that at the top of every one of them, you can see they all say a song of ascents. Psalm 120 is the first, and they go all the way through to 134, the songs of ascents, literally songs of journeys upward. Probably lumped together originally as a hymn book for Jewish pilgrims, journeying up to Jerusalem for the feasts like Passover. And it's not difficult to draw connections to our story, because to be a part of God's people is to be on a journey. That language of journey has kind of been hijacked to mean everything and nothing. I said it of Russell Brand, he's on a journey. But to say that of someone doesn't really say anything substantive at all about what they believe or where they think they're heading. But there's loads in the Bible about Christians as travelers, walking with God on the narrow path, the way. We're even kind of heading to the same destination. These pilgrims on the road to the earthly Jerusalem, which was a shadow of New Jerusalem, much more glorious, which one day all of God's pilgrims will arrive in as our home. And the point is, these sung prayers encourage us on the road, songs to keep us going as we journey up to the great city of God. I wonder how that journey is going for you at the moment. That would be a good question to talk about later. Maybe you've had more time to think about it during lockdown. Maybe not. But I hope we all will over these next 15 Sundays, 15 Psalms. Some of you old-timers will be thinking, I know, haven't we looked at the Psalms of Ascent before? Well, yes, we have dipped into them, but not for a while. Never in consecutive context like this, and about half of them not at all. So I'm excited about how these weeks might refresh my own devotional life, which always needs refreshing, and reinvigorate all of us on the journey with the Lord. I'll say more as we go about how these songs of ascent fit into the bigger picture of the story of the Psalms, and more about the detailed structure that we find within them. But the simple movement is a journey from one place, Psalm 120, to a very different destination in 134. And the place this journey begins is not nice, you'll have noticed from the reading. If the Psalm 120 person is in the Zoom room later and you say, "How are you?" meaning, "How's your weekend been?" or "Did you manage to get out of the house?" well, get ready for a conversation that might feel a wee bit more intense. Verse 5 sums up where this traveller is at. "Woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar." That word woe has an extra emphatic sound at the end of it. In the original, it's woe. Ugh. How's life on the journey? Ugh. It's honest, isn't it? And I'm so grateful that this honest response is here, because after 8 weeks of lockdown, woe to me could be precisely how you're feeling. This poor soul is distressed because of physically where he finds himself in verse 5. You don't have to know the geography to get that Meshech and Kedar are not happy places. In terms of a journey, they're the faraway lands, 1,000,000 miles from God and his temple. It's a metaphor. One is in the far north, the other in the desert south. You couldn't actually be in both places at the same time. And it kind of works, I think, if you extend the metaphor with the map of the UK. So Meshech is a bit like the north, Scotland, where I come from, and Kedar, the deep south, somewhere like Cornwall, the lunatic fringes of the United Kingdom, some people would say. Sorry if that extension of the metaphor is not helpful for you. But you insert wherever it is, wherever you find to be the uncongenial places where you feel far from home. Do you ever feel far from God? Far from home spiritually? Well, one of the challenges of a psalm like this is always, have we actually become quite comfortable in the faraway lands? Do we ever share the psalmist's distress about living in a world like this? And again, at this moment, we probably have a heightened sense that it's not the new Jerusalem we're building here on earth. We don't even have our physical church gatherings to give us a taster of the heavenly assembly right now. And it's great that we're all making the best of it. We need to put our circumstances in perspective. But there's a degree of grief in this ongoing lockdown, isn't there? Maybe it hits you in waves. Well, God ordained permission to be distressed, permission to express that sense of lament, even to pray, woe to me. And notice the particular thing that makes our friend feel so displaced is that he, like us, is surrounded by voices that are loud and proud and anti-God. Surrounded, verse 2, by lying lips and deceit. That's other people's lying lips, not his. We know that because verse 7, he's trying to speak peace from his mouth, but when he does, they are for war. Interesting, I think, that lying lips and deceitful tongues are mentioned, because isn't it just the truth that the voices we're taking in around us are a hugely significant factor in whether God's people feel far or close to home? Do you know they say the average person takes in between 30,000 and 100,000 words a day? And many of them, I'm sure, are great, but have you learned to be alert to the lies of our culture that we just drink in? To name them for what they are? Many of us will have been consuming more voices than ever through social media, Netflix, those random things that you never normally would have the time to look at, but suddenly have managed to grab some of your screen time. The ads, the images, spend your way out of lockdown blues. Look like this. Look at this. Prayer might be up lately, but do you know they say the porn industry is as well, as are adverts for online gambling. And the Christian pilgrim feels, get off my case, I'm trying to be a godly person over here. All of these lies and deceits messing with my head, trying to persuade me what I should be into, what I think is important. The war rages in here and out there. Perhaps there's just a general culture of lies in your workplace. More specifically, think of the way God is talked about among your friends or not. The deceitful tongues may be more personal and antagonistic. It's awkward when you go on about Jesus at the family catch-up. Stop trying to use this crisis as an opportunity to spread your religion. Verse 7, I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. See, to be God's people in this hostile world always carries a whiff of being in a war zone. Which is ironic, because verse 7, as for Jesus himself, it's the peaceable good words of the gospel that produced the conflict. Home with the Lord feels so far away sometimes, doesn't it? Woe to me. Now, we need to say this first psalm in our collection is not the whole story. We'll see highs as well as lows. To be honest, we'll hear more uplifting words than these. Someone I once shared this psalm with said they were grumpy enough without the Bible giving them an excuse like this for self-pity. Is that what this is? No, I don't think so, because for one thing, he's not grumbling in a corner. Notice having the conversation with God, leaning into the Lord in his distress, verse 1. That's what Lenya was talking about. Is the Lord your go-to when you feel up against it in this way? Has he been recently? Another reason this is godly is it's not just some kind of form of prayer that simply has its value in giving you an opportunity to externalize and to spout off, though there may be benefits in that, as the scientists claim. Now, this person is clear that God will see every lie put right. That's what verse 3 to 4 is about. The deceitful tongues will get a painful comeback from the burning coals of God's justice one day. The virus of lies is what has ruined our world from the beginning. We, like the psalmist, should long for God to put them to an end. And the other thing is that here is someone who is clear about his own destiny. He says in verse 1 that his prayer was answered, but it's not an answer of immediately changed circumstances, because notice he's still feeling the battle at the end of the psalm. The hint that he knows he will be delivered from his distress comes in this little word in verse 5, sojourn. Means a temporary dweller. That's why tents are mentioned. My son wants us to go camping in the garden for half term in lieu of going away next week. I'm not very keen myself, to be honest. That's the last time we went on a camping trip. If you look close, you can see that my smile is totally forced. Yeah, we're off camping, great. I find one night of camping every 5 years is about the right ratio, and we'll try and stick with that in the family. Because no matter how many gadgets and inflatable, self-inflating mattresses you have, you just can't help but feel a little bit unsettled. You expect that when you dwell among the tents, that it's not always comfortable. And as Christians, we need to be realistic, don't we, about what this life is. You would expect to feel out of sorts. Are we nearly there yet? It's been too long, when you're still in the temporary dwellings of the journey, which is what this life is. But we're on a journey home. Psalm 134, right at the end of the Songs of Ascent, is the Lord's ultimate answer to the distress expressed here. When I was a boy, there was a chorus that was basically this psalm put to music. Come bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord, who stand by night in the house of the Lord. I don't know if you know it or if you can hear at least the rhythm there, not the rhythm of my singing, but the repetition in the psalm, the repeated beat of Psalm 134. And we'll see this in more detail when we get there in 14 weeks' time. It's the Lord. The Lord. All the talk in this place is of the Lord. And that's very different from the place of our sojourning. No more tents. Notice it says we're in a house. No more far off. The temple courts of the Lord symbolize being as close to him as you could be. And no more lying lips. Only words of praise. That's one of the reasons we love being together at church. It's why we miss it at the moment. Being with other voices who bless the Lord, who encourage us with truth rather than lies. That's one of the things that makes home with him not feel so far away. I was up in the main church yesterday. It's sad to be up in there without all of you. But the Songs of Ascent speak of a journey to an even better reunion than the one we'll share at the end of lockdown. Imagine a place where you don't just get a taster on a Sunday, day and night, 24/7, it's all about the Lord. On Monday, you switch on the radio, click online on the news, they're talking about him. Things go well at work, people say, hasn't the Lord been kind? Imagine a place where it's never awkward to mention him. You never start World War III when you do. People are actually coming up to you saying, will you remind me about him? Sing to me, please, of his beautiful son. No more exhausting internal battles to fight the deception. That place will be such a relief for weary travelers, won't it? But for now, we live among the tents. Our calling is in the far away places. Life on the road. This life is just a journey, but soon we will be home. And home will be amazing.